Our culture gets men to be passive, which is our default, and it gets women to take on more than they can handle, and that destroys the family, and that destroys a lot of things. And so it's such a deceptive way, a manipulative way of tricking people and households into not functioning the way I think God created us to function. If you can pray with your partner, pray with your spouse, that seems to break all kind of pride and walls that can come up that would prevent you from doing those things.
From exposing heavy metals in Girl Scout cookies to unpacking what biblical, healthy male leadership in a home really looks like, Dr. Austin Lake brings a unique blend of science and scripture to the conversation. Dr. Lake is a functional medicine practitioner, health educator, and founder of Holy Health. He's helped thousands overcome chronic fatigue, hormonal imbalances, and autoimmunity through root cause healing. And today, he's here to share that wisdom with us. Subscribe to Real Alex Clark on YouTube or Culture Apothecary on Spotify to watch this episode, and join the Cute Conservatives Facebook group for additional discussions. We're on Instagram at Culture Apothecary, and I am too at Real Alex Clark. Pause right now, leave a quick 5-star review because it tremendously helps the show, and we want to continue bringing it to you for free. Please welcome Dr. Austin Lake to Culture Apothecary. You exposed Girl Scout cookies and it went viral. What have they been hiding?
Well, they've been hiding a lot of things. I mean, I think it's not specifically the Girl Scout cookie organization. It's just like, it's a prime example of what we feed our kids and all sorts of different snacks, right? Like we have these processed foods that they eat in lunch cafeterias. They have these foods they're eating when they come home and they're in their pantry. And so it's not just specific to the Girl Scouts, but the Girl Scouts were kind of more controversial because of the like heavy metals that were in their products. And so that was more of a recent finding through, I think it was the moms across America, maybe they were doing the studies and found that there was some issues with the actual ingredients. And so, yeah, I just was out one day and saw some Girl Scouts and they were selling cookies. And I kind of just was like, I don't want anyone to buy these things. Like, I don't want anyone to consume these, let alone children, and let alone children to be promoting this stuff. And so I just decided to try to buy them all up, and the moms wouldn't let me.
So when you say you tried to buy them all up, what does that mean? Like, tell us the scenario. Walk us through the day.
Yeah, I was just going to the store. I think it was, we have only a Walmart in our little town that we live in. And so we were out at Walmart, and I just walked by and they had a bunch of boxes out. And I was just like, I'm just going to buy all these boxes just to make sure nobody else is buying them. And then I was like, this would be kind of a good video idea. And so I was just walking into the store. I found some teenage girls like, hey, could you record this for me? I'm going to talk to these ladies real quick. And so she did. And yeah, the video went viral very quickly.
So you walked up to this table, these little girls selling the cookies. There's a parent there. And you're like, hey, there's really bad stuff in these cookies. I'd really like to just buy them all. And what was the mom's reasoning for not allowing you to buy? Because I would think like they're trying to sell them and raise money. Why wouldn't they want you to buy all of them?
They wanted their daughters to get the business experience of interacting with customers, which I can understand that. But I think the other issue they had is that they didn't really think that it was a problem selling them. So they didn't have any kind of problem with selling those products. And I think when I brought up what was in them and what the problem was with them, I think they were kind of dismissive of it, saying like, well, there's no real research studies indicating that this is a problem, and that even the seed oils are an issue, or that there's any heavy metals in there, and there's just a bunch of moms doing the research on it. So how can you trust that? And it was just like this whole thing. And really what it felt like to me was that's a pretty good example of how a lot of people feel about this stuff. It's like, well, where's the research to back it up? If research doesn't support it, then why would I go with that? And conventionally, medical doctors don't say it's a problem, so I'm going to trust the experts. And it was just kind of more of like,
did you say I am a doctor?
I said I'm Dr. Lake, and you should check out my page, and all that. But they weren't all that intrigued by that, and so I think they mostly felt a little bit on the spot. Which again, I looking back on it, it maybe wasn't the best approach to kind of raise awareness to it. But the cool thing is that it did go super viral.
What were the comments like under the video? Did people on the internet think like, yeah, he's doing the right thing, or like, no, this is insane?
It was probably like a 70-30 support of, like what it was a good thing. But the 30% were definitely like, why is he harassing these little girls and all this stuff, and just let them sell what they want to sell. The organization's good. And honestly, the girls were like all about me getting all their stuff sold, so they didn't have to do all the work and stuff. But It was fine. It was like $300 worth of cookies that I was trying to buy, and yeah, they wouldn't sell it to me.
Did you get into functional medicine because you were sick or because you were smart?
Sick. Yeah,
Okay.
I grew up in a very sick household in a way. Both parents were had a lot of chronic diseases from an early age. Like my mom has a pretty severe autoimmune issue that she developed from, in my opinion, purely stress. My brother had cancer when he was 14
Oh my
and
gosh.
nearly died, and so it was a huge toll on him, obviously, and thankfully he survived. And it was actually cool. We moved from Iowa to Utah when I was like 12, and we weren't really sure why we were moving there. It just kind of felt like it was something that we're supposed to do. And like 10 months of us being there, he got diagnosed with leukemia. And it turns out that one of the top two specialists for that type of leukemia was the doctor that treated him in Utah. And so it was definitely like a divine reason that we were there, is what it felt like, because he basically saved his life, even though he was using, pharmaceutical drugs, and he was using chemo and radiation, all that stuff that I'm obviously against. But it worked for him to kind of kill it off and save his life. So that put a lot of stress on my mom. My dad had a lot of stress just from financially with trying to provide for the family. So he was working a couple of different jobs for a long time and had a heart attack when he was 42. And so I've just been around a lot of that kind of stuff and seen kind of the one side of survival, of just like what it takes to get through things. And, it's definitely not like this health optimization lifestyle. It's more about trying to get through and survive and just trying to like take the next step that you can. And so I saw how that life looked and felt. And through that, I started having my own issues with stomach ulcers, and was using a lot of ibuprofen a lot to kind of just mitigate my pain that I was having, but didn't know that my back pain was actually being caused by my stomach ulcers. And the pattern that I was caught up in was like take a medication for my pain, and then the medication was causing more pain. And so I'd take more, and it was just a very vicious cycle. So I destroyed my gut health when I was like 16 through like 25. It was really, really bad, and just felt like achy all the time and fatigued all the time. And through all that, I kind of just realized, and even getting married to my wife, like she started showing me like, hey, like, we can make meals, and, you don't need to be eating canned chili all the time. And, you can like, you can survive, you can like eat real food and not just, like I had no real concept of what health really looked like, unfortunately.
Well, it's interesting to me that your own brother was diagnosed with leukemia, ended up surviving, used, traditional medicine treatments like chemo and
Hmm.
radiation, but you said, that's not what I would do now.
Yeah.
So even though you had personal positive experience with those treatments, why wouldn't you use those if it, horrifically came to be that you needed
Yeah,
to?
that's a really good question. I think the primary reason is that if you look at why most people die after a cancer diagnosis, it's because of the cancer treatment. Like your liver can fail, your organs can fail. And like that's usually what kills people after they've had chemotherapy or radiation. And so knowing that, it's like, yeah, my brother's 14. He was young enough to, I think, kind of recuperate from that, and it didn't just devastate him completely. He did have to get bilateral knee replacement or knee surgeries, and had a lot of negative symptoms from that. But I think he was able to kind of overcome them just because he was youthful. A lot of people that have treatment, they don't have such a positive experience. Like they start seeing a downhill decline, and it depends on the cancer. I'm not like an oncologist or an expert on this at all, but the ways that I've seen on why people usually get cancer is kind of why I say that. It's like I really do believe that cancer is kind of an immune system deficiency,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not just this unknown thing that happens. Like there's a reason that our immune system gets to a point where it can't fight off cancer cells. And if you start looking at fringe idea on this, and there's people out that are way more well versed in this than I am, but they'll use things like apricot seeds and B17, which has amygdalin in it. And amygdalin is what, once it gets into our body, it will actually break down and kill cancer cells. And it uses cyanide, which cyanide's a very controversial compound because it can be very toxic in high doses, right? Like it can kill you. But in low doses coming through food, like apricot seeds, it actually can kill the cancer cells. And then if you have healthy cells, you have this thing called rhodonase in it, which you can get through foods. And it's actually this thing that is naturally produced within our bodies. And that will prevent the cyanide from destroying other cells in your body. And so there are ways that you can take apricot seeds like B17 through eating it, or you can take it through compounds, you can take it through supplements, and then you can take things like proteolytic enzymes that will actually break down the tumor cell, allegedly. Again, this is like fringe research, but people from 50, 60 years ago were doing this, and they got canceled and they lost their license and they went to jail. And it's even kind of still considered to be like a banned procedure that you can do in the United States. And the other thing that you can do is chemo and radiation and surgery to treat
Yeah.
cancer. So these are like supportive measures for helping somebody going through cancer. But it is interesting if you start looking at it from that perspective of there's a topic of immune system deficiency, but also parasites. Like parasites are a big problem with cancer because they will affect how your immune system responds to things like viruses and bacteria. And so if you have a lot of parasites, it'll deactivate Th1 cells, within your immune system, and it will prioritize Th2 cells. And so Th1 cells are the ones that go after viruses and bacteria. And Th2 creates like this autoimmune response. And so a lot of people that have parasites are more prone to things like cancer and autoimmune issues. And the list kind of goes on and on. It's one of those things that once you see kind of how you can affect it, it's like, I would way rather do those things first to support somebody rather than going right to chemo and radiation.
Well, your specialty is helping women reclaim an active and purposeful life with functional medicine.
Mhm.
So where is the first place that you start?
I always like to know just what challenges they're up against. So, we were talking about my wife and I and just, having kids and, life is busy and there's a lot going on and, you can create a perfect plan for somebody, but if they can't execute it, it's worthless, right? And so I always want to know what challenges they're faced with. And it usually starts with their diet, right? Like I want to know, like, what are they eating? Like, what's a common meal look like for you? Like, where are you getting these foods? And for most women, it's convenience foods. They're grabbing things because they don't have time. Like they're busy. Like, and they're running kids all over the place and they have a job and they're trying to manage their home and it's just a lot, right? And so you start looking at those factors and then you have to then analyze, like, do you have a consistent sleep schedule? Most people don't. Like we're staying up late watching Netflix on our phones. Then you have to wake up and take the kids to school and you're not eating breakfast. And so you're grabbing something on the go or you're just drinking coffee and skipping breakfast because you're supposed to be fasting. And so you start seeing all these different patterns with women and people in general that are impacting their health pretty substantially. And so I always like to kind of look at their life and just audit it a little bit. I guess is what I would say is trying to figure out how we can start to create strategies that, much like a financial investment, will start to rebuild their wealth and kind of make money while they're sleeping. Or in this example, like actually be healing while they're sleeping and healing while they're living their day and actually contributing to healing rather than causing disease. Because a lot of people are doing these things that are accelerating the aging process and we're calling them, diseases. But the reality is we're not getting the body into a state of healing. Like the body is designed to heal. Like your stomach cells or your gut lining heals within 3 to 5 days. Like it's replacing cells. Your liver can be made has new cells being made like every 6 to 7 months. And your bones are remade every 5 to 7 years. And so it's like, our bodies are designed to heal and make new tissue, but we are then pumping it full of toxins and, garbage food and deficiencies that then don't allow the body to do what it was created to do, which is to heal. And so a lot of people get these symptoms that are really just poor. They don't detox, right? Like they're not detoxifying the things that are coming in. So they're bringing things in all the time that are bad for them.
Yeah.
And they don't get any of that stuff out.
Okay, I'm about to say something controversial. When do I not? If your floss has PFAS in it, that is not self-care. It is a crime against your gum line. I used to think I was killing it with my clean routine. Glass water bottle, clean mascara, maybe even a little magnesium at night because I'm mature now. And then I found out, my floss was made of the same material as yoga pants. Literally polyester. I was like, wait, are my molars wearing Lululemon? That's why I now use Zebra. Zebra's floss is made with actual silk, like Marie Antoinette might have used it if she'd cared about oral hygiene. I don't know if she did. I mean, the French people don't shave their armpits, right? So they probably didn't floss. It's coated in peppermint oil and xylitol, no plastic, no forever chemicals, and zero vibes of a chemical science experiment in your mouth. And don't even get me started on the deodorant. Oh my gosh, Zebra deodorant is aluminum-free, it's paraben-free, it's most importantly embarrassment-free. It goes on clear and it doesn't leave you with that, I tried to go natural, but now I smell like onions vibe. Plus, they have a baking soda-free formula for really sensitive underarms, which I appreciate because my underarms can be a little dramatic, just like me. Their toothpaste tablets are the final boss. You chew them, they foam, you brush, kids are obsessed. Honestly, I kind of am too. It feels like brushing your teeth in the future. So yeah, if you're still using toxic deodorant and floss that doubles as fishing line, basically, it's time to grow up. Use code Alex at yayzebra.com for 10% off. That's yayzebra.com with code Alex for 10% off. Who is done with the gaslighting? The world is lying to women. It tells us that motherhood is bondage, that femininity is weakness, and that our value comes from mimicking men. But we know better. This summer, we're taking it all back at The Last Stand, a one-day festival in Southern California that's basically the Coachella of conservative Christian truth bombs. I'm talking powerful worship, inspiring speakers, and the kind of community that you've been craving. I'll be there, along with Riley Gaines, Heidi St. John, Victoria Robinson, Seth Gruber, David Harris Jr., and more fearless voices. There will be thousands of families rising up as the remnant, ready to reject the chaos and rebuild on God's design. We're coming together to be inspired and reminded why God put us on earth for such a time as this. If you're a mama who refuses to let the culture raise your kids, if you're a dad who's tired of sitting on the sidelines, if you're hungry to see revival, you belong at The Last Stand. Go to thelaststand.com, use my code ALEX10 to get a discount off your tickets. See you on June 21st in Southern California, because families who stand on truth will shape the future. Where else can you have a blast and deepen your faith and values? The Young Women's Leadership Summit is the answer. This is the biggest conservative women's event in the country. It's in Dallas, Texas, June 13th through 15th. It is the ultimate girls' weekend. You're going to laugh, you're going to cry, you're going to leave inspired by leaders like Erica Kirk, Hilda Labrada Gore, Riley Gaines, Brett Cooper, myself, and many more to be announced. Truth is powerful, and this summit proves it. Head to YWLS2025.com and use code ALEX for 25% off. Grab your girls. This one's unforgettable. Okay, this is random, but do you know who the influencer Pookie is?
No.
Okay, so
I don't.
She's like a massive fashion influencer. Her and her
Okay.
husband are always showing like what they're wearing, and they're adorable. They're the cutest, sweetest couple. They just had a new baby. Anyway, she just had a cancer diagnosis or something. And I think everything worked out. But while she announced that she had cancer, her husband, like, she was always posting these videos of her husband bringing her Chick-fil-A every morning and taking her to Waffle House and all this stuff. And I had commented on one of them, and I meant it in a sweet way,
Sure.
but I was like, Pookie, no more Waffle House or Chick-fil-A.
Right.
Like no more of this. And people were so upset with me for saying that. Like,
Really?
how dare you? Like, she's going through a hard time. Like, let people eat what they
comfort
want to
food.
eat. It's a comfort food if that makes her feel better. And I was like,
Yeah.
this
crazy.
is the mindset. This is the mindset. And I like adore this girl, but this
Sure.
is the mindset that is killing Americans.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the problem is, like, people like you and I, like, we kind of think everyone knows this stuff. Like, we kind of think it's common knowledge. But the problem is it's not yet. Like, it's not mainstream enough to where people are going with this narrative. Even though we have RFK in there and, you know, we have some good things going, it's still one of those things that is controversial. And I think it really is a weapon of whoever you want to blame it on as to why this deception is still within our conventional mainstream media, because there's a death culture at hand. Like, I don't think people want more people on the earth. Like, I think they want less people on the earth and more control over it.
There's
And
a death cult.
Yeah, it's a death cult. And so you see it with birth control and how it just destroys fertility. You see it with the food we're eating and how it destroys, testosterone and women's hormones. And you see it with, how people are literally just living longer, and like, there's just so many factors that indicate that people don't want people around.
So I just had to take an Uber to an airport, and the Uber driver had a massive stack of car freshener trees on his rearview mirror.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm like dying this
Sure.
entire car ride. But I was like, do I say something? Do I not say something? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to say something.
Sure.
So when I was getting out, I said, hey, thank you so much for dropping me off and getting me here safe. I said, I want to tell you something. I said, those trees, I said, I know they smell really good.
Yeah.
I said, but those can hurt your testosterone.
Right.
The artificial fragrance or whatever.
Mhm.
And he said, oh, thank you for telling me that. And he immediately took them and threw them in the trash.
Wow.
So I was
That's
like,
amazing.
okay, that
Yeah.
worked out really well.
Yeah.
But like, you're right. When you say like people just don't know this stuff.
Yeah.
So I said it in a really nice way, and I was like, they smell so good. They
Sure.
don't smell good. But I was
Right.
like, I know these smell so good.
Yeah.
But these can really wreck your testosterone. So can you talk about that, like artificial fragrance, and how, what that means when we say that that's an endocrine disruptor and how that can harm your hormones?
Yeah, so a lot of these things, there's a lot of examples of that. But in that category of endocrine disrupting chemicals, they basically will block receptor sites and or mimic the effects of certain types of hormones without getting the benefit of those hormones. And so you start getting, like estrogen, for example. There's a lot of phytoestrogens that will start to mimic estrogen, but you start to recirculate these weak estrogens, and they have really damaging effects on your hormonal balance, especially for women, right? Like men, we have more of a, I guess, like a margin for that, because we have testosterone that is not going to be, we have a much more stable cycle than women do, right? Like, you're kind of going through a 28-day cycle. We're pretty much like a 24-hour cycle. It's very consistent. Women, you're like if you're too stressed, your progesterone gets reduced. If your progesterone's too low and then your estrogen's too high from these fragrances or from, the clothes you're wearing or the things you're smelling or breathing, like all that stuff creates more of a dominant state of estrogen, right? And so now you have this imbalance that creates more issues with like endometriosis or PCOS or just infertility. And again, like for a woman who's living a busy life and has high stress and not eating enough fat and protein and not getting enough circadian rhythm into her life, those now become something that can kind of tip the scales in the wrong direction, to where maybe by themselves, not a huge deal. Combined with everything else, it's a massive deal, especially if you're around it all the time.
Yeah.
And then you have the issue with makeup and the things they're wearing on their face or their skin
I
and
know.
lotion.
That's a lost cause for me it's in some ways. But
there are some good products out there that will work.
And I use some of them, but it's also a little impossible with I have to wear so much makeup for on camera.
Yeah.
Some of it is.
But there is a
clean,
balance though, because like
isn't.
that's what I was telling Katie before this. It's like, it's not that we have to be perfect. Like we don't want to obsess to the point to where it's actually negative for our health, because nobody's gonna be perfect. Like in this environment, you can't be perfect, but it is something that you can kind of move it back towards the middle
100%.
to where you can be a little more balanced with that stuff.
I dated this guy once, and I was sharing my period app with him so he could see where I was in my cycle. And I kind of tried to give like minimal information of explaining like, hey, we go through 4 different phases throughout the month. Like I'm going to have slight mood changes and whatever. And he kept and it was like clockwork. Every time I was in my luteal phase, that's when we would have an argument. And I was like, listen, I am way more irritable at this time of the month. Little things are going to set me off. I'm not handling stress well. I'm very overwhelmed. Can you just wait to have these conversations with me and tell me bring something that you're upset about or whatever with me. Can you not do it during these couple days?
Sure.
And we would always have arguments in that time. And he was like, he's like, this stuff is bogus. You're using the luteal phase as an excuse for your bad behavior. And I was like, okay, I am not.
We're done.
I am not at all. And I understand that. Yeah, of course there's you can't get away with treating a guy like crap or something and being like, well, I'm on my period, so I can just treat you terribly. There's, also just sinful behavior.
Sure.
But especially as a Christian, I understand that. But bringing things to someone, knowing that it's going to provoke them or whatever during that time. Can you just speak to what men need to understand about a woman's cycle so that they have the happiest relationship possible?
You hit the nail on the head. I always tell guys, you got to just picture, a 28-day cycle. And I always like to kind of describe it as a bell curve. At the beginning of the cycle, you got to keep things a little bit less intense. Things need to be a little more chill because you don't feel at your best. You're probably low in iron. You're obviously low in blood. You're going through a period of time where you're kind of cleansing and it's just your body's not ready to go super intense. And so mentally, I'm guessing that's probably a very similar time where you should keep things pretty chill. And I think you kind of picture down here at the beginning of your cycle and at the peak is kind of more towards day 14, when you're ovulating. That's when things can be most intense, especially when it comes to exercise or activity or obviously sexual activity. That's a really good time, and it's by design to be at its peak. And as you're kind of coming down the other half, towards day 21 to day 28, luteal phase, that's when you can kind of, again, have less intensity again. And I think if guys can just kind of picture a simple bell curve and just understanding okay, she's at day 1, she just started her period, and this is day 28, it's going to be over here. 2 weeks from now, we can kind of start ramping up intensity and we can start to be a little bit more outgoing and have maybe these conversations that we need to have and be a little bit more intentional then. Just kind of picture that. That's what I try to picture. And it really is not overly complicated if they can picture that from a male's perspective. From a female's perspective, though, I think understanding that, hey, I am in the beginning of my cycle, maybe I do need to see if I'm low in my iron. Maybe I do need to take an iron supplement during the next few days. Maybe I do need to take more omega-3s or more magnesium at the beginning of my cycle and end of my cycle, so I can prepare for this because
I'm taking I do magnesium and I try to really ramp up the amount of steak I'm eating.
Yes.
And listen, I don't know what man is going to complain about that. If you are hey, we're going to start eating, living, working out according to your cycle, I feel like you're going to have a happier home, and you're really going to love the period in time where it's we need to be eating a lot more red meat.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You know what I mean? If you're eating according to your cycle like that, because you're really big on cycle syncing workouts and all that kind of stuff. So in your house, does your wife try to tailor recipes also, or not really? You guys have 4 kids. It's
there's the period of our lives right now where we're kind of a survival state. Our 7-month-old is not sleeping as well as we'd want him to. Our other kids slept much better than him. He's not sleeping great at all. And so we're getting woken up like 4 or 5 times a night.
Ooh.
And it's just like, this is not great for biohacking. Like, this is not great for our health, knowing that, but it's also like, it's worth it. So I think there's just kind of relative to where you are. But when we are in more of our peak, when our kids are a little bit older, like when she started exercising and she's doing more of that stuff, we eat steak all the time. Like, we eat very healthy as a general rule. And so that's not really a factor. But what I'll tell her to do is like take a little bit more omega-3s or take more magnesium or take more B complex at certain times of the month if I'm starting to see that she's having issues. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's like, if you have margin for it, like definitely go a step beyond and be very intentional of cycle syncing and making sure that you can maximize your effort. Because if you're going to the gym when you're at the beginning of your cycle and you're really pushing yourself, expecting to get good results, like, it's not productive. Like, you need it, like, less is more at that time period. Like, more rest is going to be more beneficial for your recovery and for muscle building and for your hormonal health anyway. So like, having that perspective of just being like, it's not bad for me to take some time off or just to rest or scale it down a little bit. Like, I can do different types of exercises, or I can eat a little bit more food or less food depending on where I'm at. Or maybe if I'm fasting, maybe I shouldn't be fasting at this point in time. Maybe I should be waiting for the middle of my cycle versus the end of my cycle, because that is a stressor. Like, fasting is a stressor. It's a good stress, but it's one of those things that it's not like, more is not always better. And I think women, just if they could kind of picture that for their month and then tell their husband about it, like, it really can be very conducive for better health.
Conservative commentator, YouTuber Brett Cooper, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I interviewed Brett and in the fall, and she told me something her husband does, which I think is one of the most romantic things I've ever heard. And it reminds me of what you do for your wife. Is her husband is very aware of like different things that she needs and where she's at in her cycle and things like that. And he puts together daily her supplements for her. And I just think that intentionality, that level of care is so sweet. It's so selfless and loving to understand your wife in that way and kind of look out for her like that. Because I think like men get caught up when we talk about how like women want to feel protected and we want a provider. I think a lot of men hear that and think money, money, money. I have to make money. That's what it means. Like, she needs a provider. That is a piece of it. But also providing is also looking out for your family's health and their best interest and making sure that your family is healthy and being taken care of in that way. And I think there's other aspects of the provider role that kind of get overlooked a little bit by today's culture. Could you speak to that?
I think the excuse that men kind of rely on is just like, like you said, like, I'm providing financially and protecting the house, like, I'm good, but it really isn't that hard to, especially now, like, we can use so much or technology to get information. Like, what is a woman's cycle like? Teach me, ChatGPT. Like, what does that actually look like? Or what kind of supplements should she be taking at this point of her cycle? And how can I best support her? Like, I think just asking those questions, you'll get the answers very quickly. And you can get it through people like myself or yourself. Like, it's really not hard to get that information. It gets back to the heart of the matter of that, like, that's something that's a godly thing to do. And it actually is in my opinion, as head of my household, like, that is my responsibility of protecting and providing for them. It's like providing them with food, providing them with leadership, providing them with like understanding and trying to create structure and trying to ensure that we have a good bedtime and trying to ensure that our kids are being well behaved and disciplined and like playing an active role in all that. Like, it's so entrenched in what it means to be holistically healthy as a household. And there's a lot of families out there that don't have health in their house. Like,
I like what you just said, talking about like, it's my role as a leader, as a Christian, as a man of my house, like, we're getting bedtime under control. We're doing this. We're having a healthy home, a holistic minded home. Mornings are hectic, so I need a breakfast that's fast, but still makes me feel good. Lately, I've been starting my day with an AWG everyday bagel, toasted and topped with grass-fed butter and a little local raw honey. It's simple, it's satisfying, and full of the kind of ingredients my body actually wants. Unlike most gluten-free options, AWG bread doesn't just ditch the gluten, it ditches all grains. So no rice, corn, or oats, just real nutrient-packed ingredients like organic almond flour, coconut flour, and flaxseed meal. That means fiber, healthy fats, and protein right from the start of your day. There's no seed oils, there's no refined sugar. It's made in a 100% peanut-free facility, plus certified organic, and the texture is amazing. I do not like any gluten-free bread. This is the only gluten-free bread that I like. I tried it for the first time getting it at Air One. I fell in love. The owner reached out. We started to become best friends, and now, well, they're a sponsor of the show. Toasting AWG bread actually makes it soft, not dry or crumbly. Go to awgbakery.com, use code AlexClark Clark for 10% off your order. Finally, a gluten-free bread that actually will make you happy. That's awgbakery.com, code Alex Clark for 10% off the only gluten-free bread and bagels I'll eat. Food should be fun. Remember that? When I got my Harvest Right freeze dryer, I started having the most fun I've had in the kitchen in years. I'm freeze drying everything: strawberries, pasta, my ex-boyfriend, even candy. The crunch, the flavor, it's addicting. It's not just fun, it's functional. I'm preserving whole meals, prepping healthy snacks, and making sure nothing goes to waste. I've even made homemade pet treats with leftover chicken. My freezer used to be a graveyard for forgotten food. Now, I freeze dry it and I store it in my cabinet for when I actually need it. Shelf-stable meals with flavor and nutrients that last decades. Want to make food fun again and actually useful and less wasteful? Go to harvestright.com to learn more. That's harvestright.com. What do you think the biblical role is in that for a man? When it comes to leadership, I think a lot of people get caught up in, well, that just means I tell my wife what she can and cannot do.
Right. Yeah.
But you're saying a lot of other stuff that some men might even be like, well, that's not my job. My job is not to figure out bedtime. That's my wife's job.
Sure.
So what's your opinion on that?
Well, we're co-laborers in that, like I think the way I look at it is where the responsibility lies. And so if things go south, like it's my responsibility for what happened. And so it's not that I have to be the one that has all the knowledge on all these topics or have to be implementing all this stuff. Like my wife is brilliant and super talented and so strong and so capable and like has changed my life for the better. Like I gotta be careful because I'll start crying if I talk about it too much. But like it's not a matter of value. Like she is the most valuable thing in my life. And so because of that, like I want to honor her and protect her because she's so valuable and because she's so important to our household. It's not that she's incapable. Like that's such a stupid and silly idea that I think, again, is our culture uses to like twist the narrative a little bit to where it gets men to be passive, which is our default. And it gets women to take on more than they can handle. And that destroys the family and that destroys a lot of things. And so it's such a deceptive way, a manipulative way of tricking people and households into not functioning the way I think God created us to function. And the reality is that I just take the responsibility if things go south. But yeah, I mean, we both have skill sets that we use. We both have things that we're gifted in. Loving your wife is our top responsibility, and loving somebody is, as you know, it's not easy. And it's one of those things that you have to you don't put yourself last. Like you still need to love yourself and take care of yourself. And then with that full cup, you can then pour it out on the people that need to be loved and that you love. But my wife, for her, it's like, and she can speak to this better than me, but for her, it's like, it's a respect issue. Like that's what's hard for her is like respecting her husband. And for me, it's hard to love my wife.
What are those moments where it's like, ooh, it's difficult, but like I need to respect them? And what do those challenges look like? And then the challenge for you of loving her through that.
When I'm not respected, like, and I think this is how most guys are, like we really value respect probably more than love. Like I think if we don't feel like people respect us for who we are, like it really is just hard to be yourself, and it's hard to kind of be a good leader.
What do you perceive as disrespect?
If there's ever a moment where I'm like, this is what I think we should do. And I prayed about it. Like I've been considering all these things and this is what I feel God's calling us to do. And, she has like a tone or she talks to me in a way that's just like dismissive of my idea or doesn't want to talk through it with me or whatever. Like that to me just feels like a stab in the heart a little bit of like, this is something that you should trust me enough to like can talk about,
So she has a tone. Maybe she's like a little bit like, I don't know.
Yeah. Or just, dismissive or,
okay. And so what does it look like for you as a husband to love her through that?
That's what really breaks it down is because if I'm able to love her, even though I don't feel respected, like that's a true act of love, and for her, if she doesn't feel loved and she still respects me, that's a true act of respect and love from her perspective. And so I think the only thing that's really helped us is if you can pray with your partner, pray with your spouse. That seems to break all kind of pride and walls that can come up that would prevent you from doing those things because it's super hard to pray with your spouse. Like, I'm not sure if you guys have done it or if you've tried it, but like truly praying with your spouse is one of the most important things. And I think there was a stat, they were looking at divorced couples, and out of the like 1,200 people they interviewed, I think less than like 2 or 1% of the people that prayed together got divorced. And I think that's just so impactful. And there were some times in my wife and I's journey where we were really at odds and struggling. And the one thing that would break us out of that was just praying together. And it's a cheat code. Like it really is a cheat code. So I think there's all these like theories and counseling ideas and probably like couples counseling strategies you could use. But like for me, that's the one thing that's worked every time.
What are 3 things that almost every woman thinks is healthy, but it's actually sabotaging her hormones?
Over exercising.
Okay.
Under eating. The third thing would be that food doesn't make a huge difference. Like what you're eating, like it's all about calories and not about the chemicals that you're consuming. It's just more of like eating healthy in general compared to the standard American diet. It's like, well, I eat salads and I don't drink a bunch of pop and I don't drink a ton of alcohol, like pretty healthy. But if you don't know if you have food sensitivities to like gluten or dairy or eggs or nightshades and you're consuming these things and you're not getting enough fat and protein in your diet, like you could be inflaming your body through these healthy foods that you're consuming. And it's just creating this inflammatory cascade of events that affect your mitochondria that then prevent you from making energy, that then you go to the gym and you have no energy to pull from, and then you're not eating enough protein to actually build muscle, and you're just creating this it's called adaptive thermogenesis, which basically means it slows down your metabolism to where now you start storing fat by design because your body thinks you're in a state of survival. And so women do that all the time, where they don't sleep, they drink a bunch of caffeine, they're under eating, they go to the gym, they work out really hard, but they're gaining weight or they're not losing weight.
When you say under eating, is that like women are not eating enough protein?
Yeah, or not even enough calories sometimes. They're not getting enough, not fat and protein for sure, but even like, like complex carbs can be healthy, like for women. I usually say about 20% of your plate should be complex carbs. Like sweet potatoes are my favorite carb. Like they're low on the glycemic index, they stabilize really well, they can have some benefit with your hormones, and they really help your thyroid. Like if they're a carb you're consuming, there's some good fiber in there. Like it really can help to stabilize blood sugar. It stabilizes your energy a little bit, and then you can eat, high quality fat and protein. And like if you're not doing that on a regular basis and you're eating mostly carbs, like you're not going to feel great. Or if you're going straight carnivore can be great temporarily, but long term it's kind of hard to sustain. So there's kind of a balance there that people have to figure out where they land. But a lot of people see benefit when they do carnivore because they're taking out a lot of the glyphosate, they're taking out all the the gluten proteins that are modified, they're taking out a lot of the ultra pasteurized dairy that has no real benefit to it versus raw dairy, which has benefit to it. And so they're doing a lot of things that they see improvement with, but long term it's hard to sustain.
What are the benefits of raw milk versus pasteurized?
So raw milk, if you look at, there was a study they were looking at bacteria that was growing in raw milk versus ultra pasteurized. And a lot of people thought you would see less harmful bacteria in the ultra pasteurized because that's kind of the reason that they do it. So the study actually showed that ultra pasteurized was more prone to harmful bacteria than the raw dairy because raw dairy has natural fat in it, and fat is antimicrobial.
Oh.
And so it protects against the bacteria from getting out of balance.
Well, this is not what the mainstream media says.
No, not at all. But what I say is like raw dairy is great if you tolerate it well. If you don't, like most of us don't have lactase to break down lactose. And so you get this like negative immune system response if your body doesn't deal with it well. And there's also like a casein protein that you can have an allergy to that can be very harmful for people. And so like I always say, dairy by itself, if it's raw, there's benefit to it. If you don't have a really, really negative response to it. If you have a negative response to it, probably best to get your benefits from some other place. But if you do okay with it, raw dairy, in my opinion, is best.
What do you think about pregnant women drinking raw milk, shooting oysters, having sushi?
I mean, I don't know. Like my wife has sushi when she's pregnant a little bit. She doesn't go crazy with it. The whole concern is mercury, getting mercury toxicity. And I think occasionally here and there it's fine as long as you are detoxing well. Like if your body doesn't detox heavy metals because your detox pathways are blocked up, like it may not be a great idea.
How do you know if your detox pathways are blocked?
You feel sick. I mean, you have congestion, you have rashes, you have low energy. You eat something and you notice your energy goes down after you consume it. You just don't recover well. You're getting sick often. Like all those things are kind of signs of poor detoxification. A lot of people that have, like autoimmune conditions, or they have skin rashes, or they have gut health issues, like they're usually probably having detox symptoms, poor detoxification issues. And the problem is like we need to be daily detoxifiers. Like it needs to be something that we do all the time. It's not that you have to always do like a huge detox every month. Like
pooping, peeing, throwing up.
Yeah, right. Like those are all detoxes, right? Like drinking water, using sauna, exercising, sweating, like pooping, not being constipated. Like those have to be done. If you're not doing those things, like you're going to be not detoxing well.
How close are we to a reproductive crisis, and who is hiding the truth?
I think we're in the reproductive crisis, honestly. Like you look at Brazil, they're a study looking at Brazil, they're going to be experiencing a population decline in the next 30 years by like 50 million people in the next 30 to 40 years. And so Italy is a prime example of that too. They're not able to replace their population. And again, it gets back to the whole death cult idea. I mean, I don't know who's leading it, but I think there's some theories, but I think the people that are actually leading it, we don't know their names and they're not in the public limelight. So it's hard to say.
A recent shocking statistic is that 60% of adults are pre-diabetic or have diabetes and they have no idea. So how did we kind of sleepwalk into this metabolic apocalypse, and what could we be doing about it?
We're not as active as we used to be. We have more technology that we utilize. Kids are not outside as much as they used to be. They're obviously eating a lot of processed foods. You look at glyphosate when it came through Roundup in 1972. That's when things started to, really compound in terms of metabolic syndrome from the 70s until now. It's, astronomically higher. I don't even know the stats anymore, but it's crazy higher. And the crazy thing is that it's happening in younger generations. It's not just happening in 40 and 50 and 60-year-olds, it's happening in adolescence. And that's like the most scary thing. But I think it always gets back to if your body's experiencing chronic inflammation through the foods you're consuming, because a lot of these foods are high in omega-6 fatty acids, and they basically make your cell wall membrane more rigid to where you can't have the flow of good things in and bad things out of your cell. And if you do that, you don't detoxify it. And your cell gets more inflamed and your mitochondria gets damaged, and then you can't produce energy, and then you're more prone to be lazy, and you're more prone to not move. And then you don't burn glycogen, and then you start having more insulin resistance issues, and then you start having diabetes. That's really kind of the progression that happens. But it all starts with food and clean air, clean water, and moving your body. It really sounds simple, but implementing it's tough for people especially when they don't have a conviction that they even have a say in the whole thing.
Why is hand sanitizer one of the worst things you could use? There's
a ton of alcohol in those. Typically, if you're going to use alcohol-based hand sanitizer, it needs to be 60% or less. It's not going to be as toxic for you, but they also just use a lot of fragrances, like we were saying before, and endocrine disrupting chemicals. It's just one of those things that if you're using it occasionally, probably not a huge deal. But if you want to have good, healthy skin, good, healthy microbiome, you don't want that stuff absorbing through your skin. Your skin is like a big mouth. And so whatever you put on your skin, it's likely to get through into your system, into your bloodstream. If you're working in the hospital and you're putting it on all the time, or you're just somebody who's constantly spraying your hands with hand sanitizer, it's not going to bode well for your gut microbiome and for your skin health. And obviously your hormones as well. So you can make hand sanitizer very easily. The recipe I provided was witch hazel and colloidal silver and eucalyptus oil. Those are all three simple ingredients you can combine and put a little spray bottle, and you're good to go. So it's pretty simple.
You're a father of 4 and a doctor. How scared are you of measles?
I'm not. I think, again, it gets back to if you cultivate a healthy environment within your child's immune system, within their body, the body's been pretty good at handling measles for the last 50, 60, 70, 80 years, especially at this point. I think the bigger issue that we see is what the vaccines are contributing to, actually causing more problems than they're trying to alleviate. And so you're more likely to kind of get secondary effects from having a vaccine. So it's not really the juice isn't really worth the squeeze on that one for me. If I had a really immunocompromised child, maybe that would be a different story. Probably not though, but it's hard to say. All I can speak to is what I know about my children. Yeah, I've talked to really smart pediatricians on this that know a lot more about it than me, and they kind of tend to feel the same way. And so that's more of their opinion, and my opinion is just specific to my kids. I wouldn't do it for mine.
Why do you think hot showers make thyroid issues worse?
Whenever you're in a hot shower, if the water is not if the water is chlorinated, chlorine absorbs through your skin, and so chlorine is part of the halide family, and so that competes for absorption with iodine and bromine, and so iodine's super critical for your thyroid health. And so if you're in a hot shower, for 10 plus minutes, you're getting, I can't remember the equivalent. It's like drinking 8 to 10 glasses of chlorinated water.
Ew,
and
what?
So it's pretty substantial.
Now I have Hashimoto's, and I do have a shower filter and a bath filter. I have learned to kind of stay out of hot tubs.
Yeah, for sure.
That makes me feel horrible the next day.
Chlorine. Yeah.
And I think that's really messing with me. And I brought that up with a few different guests that I've interviewed about autoimmune. I'm like, the hot tubs. Nobody ever talks about hot tubs.
Yeah.
That makes me feel super sick.
Yeah, I've had a lot of clients that were swimmers or had hot tubs, and they had Hashimoto's, and I told them to just stop using it for a bit and see how you feel. And yeah, same thing. They felt immediately better just because their chlorine levels went down and their iodine levels went up, and that's what your thyroid needs to make T4. So
Yeah.
really important.
Now, there is like a chlorine spray. It's like before you go in the pool spray that Ro Casa sells, I think,
Okay.
and they're not a sponsor or anything, but
Yeah.
I have that and I like spray that on before if I am going to get in a pool
Oh,
or
okay.
something.
Interesting. I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, it helps like protect your skin from the chlorine or something
Interesting.
from absorbing,
Yeah.
which is cool.
That's the biggest thing is just get a chlorine filter on your shower or get a whole house filter. The nice thing about filtering your water is, chlorine absorbs through your skin. Fluoride doesn't absorb through your skin. So you only get fluoride for drinking it. So you have to have like an RO system if you're going to be drinking your water. And if you don't have like a whole house filter, you can still, well, even if you have a whole house filter, it'll filter out chlorine, atrazine, all these other chemicals, but it doesn't filter out fluoride usually. So you have to get like an RO system just for your sink, like for your drinking water, if you're going to be doing that.
After years of wearing hand-tied extensions, my hair was not thriving. Thinning, brittle, and just overall sad. I finally took them out, but then I was like, okay, well, now what? I mean, I want my real hair to grow. That's when I found cowboy colostrum, and it's honestly been a total hair comeback story. So I do have clip-in extensions right now if you're watching the episode, but you see me all the time without my extensions in, which just adds like a little bit more thickness. My real hair grew over 7 inches last year. It is pretty long. I mean, my real hair is just maybe an inch or two shorter than what my extensions are. I was diligent about putting cowboy colostrum in my drink every morning. I've been mixing cowboy into my smoothie. I used to do it in my iced chai tea, and it is packed with natural growth factors, amino acids, and bioavailable nutrients that support hair growth and thickness from the inside out. And unlike the other colostrum brand that you probably see all over social media, cowboy is different. Okay, why? Because I see your posts all the time in the Cute Conservatives Facebook group. Well, what is the difference between this brand and this brand? Cowboy only uses first milking colostrum. It is completely unstripped. So what does that mean? It means it still has all of the good fats and proteins intact, which makes it more effective and nutrient dense, like whole milk versus skim, okay? So is this starting to make sense? I personally love the unflavored one. It mixes in seamlessly to my smoothie. Just go to cowboycolostrum.com, use code ALEX for 15% off. That's cowboycolostrum.com, code ALEX for 15% off. Ever hug someone and walk away smelling like their perfume? Yeah. Now imagine your makeup doing that, but with synthetic fragrance that actually messes with your hormones. Well, a lot of blushes, bronzers, and eyeshadows are hiding fragrance, and that is where Adele Natural Cosmetics stands out. They don't use any of that. Every product is handcrafted with high-quality, minimalist ingredients that your skin actually wants and craves. Their moisturizing foundation is legendary. I love it. It's lightweight. It's glowy. There's no creasing. I love this during my long filming days when I want coverage without the heavy toxin burden. The Blue Lagoon Face Balm is a must-have right now. My makeup artist loves using this on me, especially with spring weather messing with our skin. Go to AdeleNaturalCosmetics.com. Use code ALEX for 25% off your first order. That's AdeleNaturalCosmetics.com. Code ALEX for 25% off your first order. What is your opinion on routine colonoscopies?
I think a lot of these routine screenings that we have are, you kind of open Pandora's box a little bit. I think having them maybe occasionally, like, typically after the age of 40 is when they start recommending you have them every few years. And I think whenever you're sticking things in places that, are supposed to be protecting the bacteria and kind of keeping that environment somewhat contained, I think it's probably not super wise, even though they sterilize them. But there's also colorectal cancer is like skyrocketing for a lot of different reasons. But it's just one of those things I would have a hard time saying, like, don't do them. But I think maybe as often as we're doing them, maybe that's not such a great idea. I have like definitely more stronger feelings about mammograms.
Oh, tell us.
I mean, I think mammogram, the radiation you get from that and just the frequency that women have those done, I think that's a huge problem. And I would, definitely discourage that. I think there's a lot better options in terms of ultrasound and getting those. And the problem is, like, they want to do a mammogram and then they'll do an ultrasound after that. And it's like, why don't we just go right to an ultrasound?
Right.
Just if we feel a lump or something like that, like, do that. But again, it gets back to this whole idea of like what's actually driving it. And for a lot of women who have poor gut health, they have high beta glucuronidase activity, which means they don't break down estrogen. They start to recirculate it back into their gut, and then it becomes a toxin that they can't. They don't detoxify very well, and so it creates more of this estrogen dominant issue. And so estrogen-based cancers are going to be more likely to be prevalent. And so I think if you're having those kind of things, like, you have to get back at your gut health. Like, that's primarily where 75% of your immune system is being housed anyway. And that's where most of your hormone metabolism's happening anyway. And so people kind of get focused on the screenings, and then you do a biopsy, and then you open up this tumor potentially, and things could start to metastasize and spread. And I think all this is done with the under the guise of just prevention and just being safe. And sometimes I think it maybe creates more problems than it's helping to solve. When I think there's better options out there for people to kind of go down that road. But again, it's such a hard thing to talk about because it's so controversial. So
Is fertility after 40 a long shot or more possible than people think?
definitely more possible than people think. It depends on the person. I think a lot of women that I've dealt with that have come to me with wanting to have a baby when they're 42, 44, they've had success, but everyone's so different. It's like, depending on how long you've been in the state of poor fertility and poor health, the timeline is obviously there's a ticking clock with that, so you can't guarantee it, but I think it's more possible than women realize.
Are you jumping on this nicotine train that RFK Jr. is on?
Yeah, I actually jumped on it before I knew he was on nicotine, just because the people I was listening to that I really trust.
Like who?
So Brian Ardis is one of these guys. He's been a really big proponent of it. There was enough of a conversation. I started looking into it, just like wanted to know why it was a problem and why it potentially could be beneficial. And yeah, what I found is that most of the people that have issues with nicotine they're smoking it. They're smoking a cigarette, and cigarettes are full of garbage that like are making you addicted to it. And it's not actually the nicotine itself. If somebody has an issue with the idea of nicotine, I would then say like you should also have a problem with caffeine. Like you should have a similar kind of view on the two, because I think caffeine is just as addictive. It has benefits to it. If you do too much of it, it can be negative. And that's kind of how I think nicotine is. Like every cell in our body for the most part has nicotinic receptors on it. And so you looked at, there's a doctor who's during COVID, he had a bunch of his patients that were smokers, and they're on their protocol. So they're in the hotel or the hospital room. They couldn't leave. So put them on nicotine patches just to kind of help their cravings. And none of those people died from COVID. And the rest of the people that were his patients, they had issues or they died. And so he was just like, well, that's weird. Like none of these people died from COVID. And it's because like nicotine blocks the receptor site for the COVID virus. And so that was like a big game changer when you kind of understand that. But then you also look at how it impacts things like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. There's some research. If you go and do some research online, you won't find, it'll say like, there's no benefit to this, like there's no help. But if you do like a deep dive on ChatGPT, for example, like you can do a deep dive research on it, and it'll spend like 15 minutes researching like everything. It'll pull up some beneficial research studies that have been done on nicotine.
Yeah, the thing with Parkinson's I read is that if you take 7 milligrams a day, you can start seeing your Parkinson's reverse in as little as 7 days.
Yeah. So the big one was falls reduced by 42%. So if you're having Parkinson's, like having those tremors, like you're more likely to fall. And if you fall and break a hip, like that's usually what kills a lot of people. And so that by itself is enough of a benefit to me from like, that's worth trying, And the cool thing is you just wear a patch, right? So it's a nicotine patch. It's delivered over the course of 24 hours. 7 milligrams is that beneficial. 714 milligrams is that beneficial therapeutic dose. And yeah, again, I think it's one of those things that's been demonized for the wrong reasons. And there's nicotine in potatoes. Like there's nicotine in foods like nightshades. So it's not that it's not a good thing. It just depends on the dose and how much and how often.
Could personalized peptide therapies tailored to an individual's genetic profile be used to enhance tissue repair and reduce chronic inflammation in conditions like fibromyalgia or autoimmune disorders?
Yeah, like it seems to be very effective. I mean, it's one of those things that if you can get into the cell and actually change a gene expression on how your body is going to respond in producing cells, like from an actual cellular level, like that's such a powerful concept that I think it's definitely worth exploring. And I think, again, it's one of those things that I think as our technology gets better and we can kind of analyze people's own genetic expression, and we have the ability to produce those kind of things, like I'm all for that. Like that seems like a cheat code that we should all be tapping into if we can.
Could intermittent fasting be aging us faster if it's done wrong?
Yeah, for sure. Again, it gets back to that whole idea of the adaptive thermogenesis issue. So there's the idea of like short-term intermittent fasting, which is, from a 16-hour time period within a 24-hour window. That's like a natural way of eating, in my opinion. Like that's not really like a true fasting idea. Like that we should just be having digestive rest in between meals and after meals, and not eating every hour that we're awake. Like if you just don't eat every hour you're awake and you have a period of rest, like that's always gonna be a beneficial thing. If you kind of land on like a 12 to 14, 16-hour fast as a woman, like that's great. Like there's no issues there. I think if you're getting to states where you're going into, 24 hours or 36-hour water fast, 48-hour water fast, you start getting into these new benefits of autophagy where you're starting to kind of clean up these dead cells, and it can be very beneficial. But if you don't eat, you will lose weight. like it's just kind of how it works. So there's kind of a balance there with all that. But I think for women who are doing it too often, if you're constantly adding stress and you're not adding any kind of reprieve to that, I think it could age you a little bit faster than you'd want.
Do you think that this rise in mystery allergies that we're seeing pop up could be linked to nanoparticle exposure in processed foods?
Yeah, or the air we're breathing.
Really?
But also the food. I mean, a lot of these vaccines that kids get, they use things like egg-based, products to kind of be adjunctives to that vaccine. I think that's where people start seeing issues with eggs and nuts and all these different foods that we're consuming. So I think the problem is the immune system becomes hyperreactive, and that hyperreactivity can be reactive to a lot of different things, depending on what your environment is like. So if you're in a state like Oklahoma, where we're currently living, there's a lot of pollen in the air. There's a lot of things that would trigger immune system response by design. But if your immune system is not hyperreactive, it's not a huge deal. But I think we're seeing a lot of immune system issues at a foundational level that just makes those allergies more prevalent.
Is orange juice good or bad for you?
Just imagine sitting down and eating 5 oranges at once. Most people don't do that. So like that's kind of what a glass of orange juice is like squeezing the sugar out of all that and the juice out of all that. When the reality is, if you're eating a whole orange, you're getting all the fiber that goes with it, and you're not going to be able to eat 5 oranges. You're going to eat 1 to be satisfied. So drinking a glass of orange juice, I think, is a huge spike in your blood sugar and probably not wise if you're doing it consistently.
Are we accidentally starving our brains by cutting out cholesterol-rich foods?
Absolutely. Consuming dietary cholesterol doesn't necessarily contribute to cholesterol within your blood. Cholesterol is actually a way that your body tries to repair damage within your blood lining or within your blood vessel. And so it's not a problem. It's a response to a bigger problem. And so we're blaming, cholesterol when the issue is inflammation.
70% of kids' diets are ultra-processed now. 40% of teens are on prescriptions. How do you think that we can reverse this trend of over-medicated, undernourished youth? And what are you looking forward to with like the new MAHA coalition?
Yeah, I mean, the parents have to know what's going on. Like they have to know what their involvement is. That's why my wife and I are so passionate about helping families. And that's why I work with women specifically, is I want to help mom who can then help the family. But if mom knows and the parents know and they take some responsibility over it, which I think they will if they know what their involvement is and how they can actually make an impact on their family, that will be the first thing. Because all these kids that go to school and like are given all these processed diets that are full of sugar and juice, and they're acting, having ADHD symptoms, it's like, well, of course they are. Like they're first of all, they're in a schoolroom for 8 hours a day or whatever, and they're getting full of this like synthetic light. They have synthetic diets. They have all these chemicals that are running rampant, and they're like, of course, they're going to be hyperactive. I think it starts with the parents feeding their kids well before they go, and then when they are at school, eating good, healthy food, having more time outside, and then so the MAHA movement is so important because we have to build the structure that supports the school systems and supports the parents to be able to execute that. If we don't do that, then it's going to be really difficult for the parents and schools to actually help the kids.
Why should Christians in particular be the healthiest people in the world?
In order to be healthy, you have to have discipline. You have to have a really strong purpose as to why it matters. As a Christian, my goal is not to be obsessed with my health. It's not to also think that it's all meaningless and do nothing with it. Like it has to be somewhere in between. And I think, as parents, like we were saying before, like you have these ideas of what good health looks like, and then you have the reality of dealing with your family and with your kids and providing for them and doing all the things that go along with that. And it's not always this ideal environment that allow you to be like the healthiest person on the planet. But I think health is much more than just your abs or your biomarkers. Like it really gets back to the joy that you have. And I think Christians who are filled with the Holy Spirit, like we are given joy, not because of anything that we're doing, but because of the gift that's been given to us. And same thing with being patient and slow to anger and having self-control and discipline. Like all those things I think is what a healthy person looks like. And that's why I think Christians could be the healthiest people on the planet.
As a Christian doctor, what do you think about Brian Johnson's mission to never die or never age or whatever?
Yeah, I want to talk. I don't know. I think I just laugh at it.
He needs to be evangelized. That's what I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because I think it's a great goal to live and be as healthy as you can, within reason, and to be sharp and to be effective in your mission and what you're doing. But spending millions of dollars on supplements every year just to what end? It's like, okay, that's great. Good for you. Like it just kind of, I think maybe his greater purpose and mission, I think at least what I've heard him say, is that he feels like if he can be kind of like the test dummy of like what it would be to be the healthiest, and he can kind of give us all the information that we need to know so we can be healthier. Like I can kind of buy why he would do this from like trying to go beyond himself, but it does seem to be pretty selfish and kind of crazy.
How can people work with you as their doctor?
Well, so I act as like a health coach. And so We don't do any prescriptions. Everything we're doing is trying to help people detox and help them to just get out of their own way so their body can do what God created it to do. We do like a 1-to-1 program to where you work with me and my team. And so what it looks like is you can just go to holy.health and you can apply there, and we'll interview you and see if it's a good fit for us to work together. We'd like to kind of know what you've done in the past, is to kind of fix your issues. If you've had certain lab work done, or if you've done a certain diet plan, or if you've tried certain things. A lot of people I talk to are like, I've tried everything and nothing works. And I'm like, that's not true. Like, like the human body is, I always tell people, like, in a non-offensive way, like, you're not that special. Like, your body has certain requirements that it has to meet. If we meet those requirements, then we kind of dive into the special, uniqueness about you and kind of what else could be missing. But most people need foundational things that we outline for them with a diet plan, with supplement protocol, and then trying to regulate their sleep and circadian rhythm. And then once we do that, we start moving into like detoxing parasites, heavy metals, mold, radiation, and we kind of get them to where their cellular health is dialed in. And then we can retest and see where they are. And usually about 4 to 5 months is kind of our timeline. And we've seen some pretty fun stuff. It's been really cool to see the testimonials.
And you have an ebook, right?
Yeah, it's just called Holy Health. You can get on my Instagram, or you can go to holy.health and you can find it. But it's just a practical guide of like basically all these things I've been talking about. And it's just it's $14. And it's my way of kind of saying, like, if you can't afford to work with me, this is a great option. And it also just kind of funds what I'm trying to do with the free content that I put out there, and doing things like this, because this stuff isn't free. But, it's one of those things that it's been very cool to see people responding with the stories that they've been reporting to me, and just kind of the results they've been seeing just by following the ebook. And it's a pretty simple guide.
What's your Instagram?
dr.austin.lake.
And I ask every guest this: if you could offer one remedy to heal a sick culture, physically, emotionally, or spiritually, what would it be?
Oh man, that's easy. I mean, you got to know your maker. Like, you got to know who created you and why he created you and why he gave you the gift of salvation for free. And believing that there's not one thing that he hasn't forgiven you for. Like, that's what held me back when I was struggling with my faith when I was 19. There was like a couple things I was holding on to that I felt like God could never forgive me for. And when I really believed, and he finally convicted me of that, like, that I forgive you for all things, like, my life changed. And so that's what I would say.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Lake, for coming on Culture Apothecary.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Whether you feel encouraged hearing Dr. Lake's tips for avoiding hot showers with thyroid issues, or you learn something new about fertility after 40, or even hand sanitizer, hopefully you are educated and entertained today. Please leave a 5-star review. Tell me what you thought. New episodes every Monday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Subscribe to Real Alex Clark on YouTube and follow me on Instagram at Real Alex Clark. I'm Alex, and this is Culture Apothecary.